Are you afraid of things in the night sky? In the second part of this two-part series, we will discuss UFOs. Are they real?
Hello everyone, tonight on this special episode, we're going to ask the question, are you afraid to know the truth? This information is not for the faint of heart. We're going to dig into mysteries. They're so wondrous, they'll satiate the desires, both subtle and gross. We have Bill here. He knows about these things. He gets information. I don't have information. I hike. I go outdoors. I don't even watch the news. Bill, do you think people are ready for the truth?
If you're into hiking and you've ever had some late nights hiking where you're not back to your car until like midnight or so, and I've had a few of those.
Yeah.
You can get kind of wigged out in the dark when you're on the trail, kind of freaking out back there, thinking about Bigfoot, aliens, lineal time, all this craziness. I would say I've been interested in some of these topics probably since I was a kid. And I wouldn't go as far as to call myself a ufologist. We'll talk about that later. But I'm definitely interested in the topic. And sometimes we have a surface level understanding of certain things and not understanding how much thought has gone into these topics for decades and decades and decades, in some cases even centuries. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to me.
I'm outdoors a lot. And sometimes, like you said, I get a chill, maybe when it's not so cold. The goosebumps. My hair stands on edge. Like there's got to be a reason, because I feel it, but I haven't seen it in person.
Well, I'll tell you, anytime you're outside, you're alone, it's dark, there are natural reasons why you're a little on edge, why you're a little pensive. You get into some like, for instance, if you're hunting, I used to love hunting. I mean, it was every fall. This time of year going into fall, this was one of the most exciting times of year because you're getting ready for hunting season. And it was just wonderful. But I've had to walk through graveyards before to get to my hunting destination in the woods. It's terrifying. I don't care what anybody says. You're loaded. I bow hunt, so you have your bow, maybe a sidearm, and you're going through a graveyard into the woods, and you hear all these noises. And a lot of that's because we don't spend our lives in the woods, walking through the woods. But not really. I mean, we go out there for hunting, we go out there for recreation, but we live in the comfort of a home. We live in the comfort around other people and feeling safe. But in woods, you feel pensive, and all of a sudden your eyes start playing tricks on you. You start seeing things, and of course you hear the stories, which puts ideas in your head. I do know some people who claim to have seen something, but the more that I'm in the woods, the less, it's not that less special it is. I love being in nature. I absolutely love it. And all the things that we have at our disposal, it's becoming more and more difficult for me to even take the subject seriously without kind of laughing and going, oh, come on, don't be so gullible. A government that can't balance its budget, it's hard for me to imagine that they could do something as responsible as locate a pair of shoes under the bed. And if they did find something like that and they tucked it away somewhere to do research, what would be the purpose in that? And surely out of all the people who would be a part of this research, nobody's going to come forward and say, this is what happened, here's my evidence, this is the proof that I have. Nobody, after all these years. I'm just not buying it. A lot of people believe in these things, but the problem that I have is the concept of believing in something. Now, maybe if belief is, if we take belief and we just trap it inside of our mind, thinking, I'm thinking about this subject, and we call that belief. Okay, then I can buy the idea of people believing in something like this. But belief, as far as evidence is concerned, and actually doing something about it, doing something involved with it, it's not there. So people say they believe in it, but what they really mean is they've got an active imagination and they want it to be true. They want that to be true, like somebody would want Star Trek to happen, or Star Wars for that matter, and wield a lightsaber and use the Force. They want that. Their imagination is fueled. And once there's that feeling of validation of, I know I saw something, because you're not in the woods that often. Here's a great example. In the 1950s, we had the big UFO craze, huge UFO craze. And it was popular, and it was being fueled by Hollywood. Hollywood was kind of pushing it just a little bit. Well, what was going on in the 50s? We were just starting a space race. We were just starting to this competition with the Soviet Union, and we were building jets as fast as we could build them. People were hearing sonic booms for the first time. Our skies were exploding with jets, and people in rural America had never seen jets, never heard sonic booms. So what do you got? You got UFOs. They're everywhere. But we want explanations, right?
Yes.
If you've never seen a tornado, especially in the mountains. In the mountains, you don't see tornadoes that often, but when they do happen, it's kind of devastating. On Lewis Chapel, not far from Saudi Daisy, up on 111, got to, we had fishing ponds up there, and got up to the top of the mountain, and I thought somebody had some serious vandalism, like the tops of the trees had been cut out. I thought UFO, I didn't know. Yeah, I had no idea. And it was a tornado. A tornado touched down and just ripped the forest up there apart. But I'd never seen that before. And so if you don't have a background on anything, in other words, you've never watched videos about the damage of a tornado, and you walk into the situation, your imagination is going to try to give you an explanation. So immediately when you see this, your brain starts, at the speed of light, trying to give it an explanation. It's a UFO. It took about another split second to go, no, that's a tornado. Of course, I'm being facetious about thinking it was a UFO, but I didn't have an explanation. I thought it was vandalism, at first, because I just saw the trailer, and then all of a sudden I started putting it together with the trees, and I looked at the neighbors way down the road. Their barn was gone. You start, okay, this makes sense. This suddenly makes sense. Okay. And I think a lot of it, UFOs are kind of the same bird, same creature. And both of them, if you're not used to looking at the night sky, and when the UFO craze was going on in the 50s, all of a sudden people started looking at the stars more. They started buying telescopes and wanting to find so they all start going out looking at, at night, and they start seeing things they've never seen before. Shooting stars, different colors of shooting stars. It's like, yeah, that's always been there. But if you've never made the observation, you wouldn't know that it's there. And so a lot of the early UFO reports were just natural phenomena. Some weren't. Some were. There were some different things going on. And again, aircraft and whatnot. We're seeing that right now too. There's another UFO craze, but this time there's something different, Toby, and that is fascinating me. And that's that the government is starting to acknowledge this phenomenon, and that's weird. I don't believe in intelligent life on other planets. It was just a well-coordinated distraction. That would be, I could see any government using UFOs to justify claiming certain things. It was predicted about 15 or 20 years ago that we were going to do what ufologists call light disclosure or gradual disclosure. And that's when that was the first time, as close to, it was before YouTube, when I'd come across websites or whatever, and I'd go, I get why ufologists would say gradual. It's because there's this weird, silly theory out there that says that gradual, the world can't handle UFOs. It would shake us to our core, and I'm like, no, it wouldn't. But in this case, it seems to me that we use propaganda a lot to fight wars, and we have two rival nations right now that it feels sometimes right now like we're on the brink of war all the time with these other rival nations. And one of the best ways to saber rattle is to pretend that you have something that maybe you do or maybe you don't, or maybe a passive threat. And so suddenly we have these things now verified by pilots, which we've now determined are expert observers. That's their definition. They are an expert observer.
Wow.
This is better than the average observer because they have two eyes. No, because they've trained, as if a hunter has any less developed eyes than a pilot. No, but we call them an expert, right? We call them an expert. And it's naval fighter pilots who are seeing these things and reporting these things. And a lot of people say, see, that adds that's verification. And I'm like, and again, I mean nothing personal at all to these young men, young women who've seen these things. I don't mean anything personal. I'm not trying to insult their character, but it wouldn't be the first time that any government has used a government employee to help spread propaganda. It wouldn't be the first time. We've been doing this since time immemorial. We've done this for the past thousands and thousands of years. So it wouldn't be new for a government employee that they've spent millions and millions of dollars training for CIA or whoever to look at them and say, listen, we need you to help perpetuate this concept. You saw this. And the reason why is because we want to make sure China stays at bay, or China stays friendly, or Russia stays friendly. And for all we know, that some of their propaganda is very similar to that. Here's what we do know is that we tend to report a lot more UFO activity than, let's say, Russia. It's not that Russia never talks about UFOs. Occasionally they talk about UFOs, especially during World War II and in the decade following, but for the same reasons why we do. A lot of the reasons where people just starting to look into space at night, actively searching for them. And so that perpetuates this rumor constantly. And so that means more people are looking in space. But between China's militarism in the past 20 years, Russia's increasing militarism, we are motivated to have a propaganda machine that kind of makes us a little more, might make us a little more feared than otherwise. So it's